mind today is a test of whether or not there's any justice in U.S. courts for the Onondaga Nation, for the undenied illegal taking of their homelands by New York State, in knowing violation of the treaties, of the Constitution, and federal law, the Trade and Intercourse Act. Or will this just be another shameful, broken promise? More broken treaties. Now New York comes into this court and says none of this matters. The fact that we took the land knowingly in violation of federal law doesn't matter. The fact that the federal government told us at the time that we were violating federal law doesn't matter. It's not fair for you to raise these things at this time. That's the standard of proof that we're arguing against today. So all that we're asking the U.S. courts is apply the same rules and principles to Indian nations as everybody else gets. So far, the U.S. courts have concocted a new defense, a new equitable defense in the name of fairness that says none of these historic injustices matter. It's just not fair to raise them anymore. And it only applies to Indian nations. This is not fair. It's not equitable. What about the disruption to the Onondaga people from the loss of their homeland? Their sacred lake has been turned into the most polluted in the country. They're deprived of their cultural, historical, and spiritual connection to that lake. What about that disruption? These courts don't talk about that. Our case in central New York has not been disrupted. It calls for healing. The fact that we have neighbors of the Onondaga Nation here working together with the nation to find justice is uniquely different from the other cases that this court has decided. The healing that's called for by the nation leaders in the first paragraph of this case calls for a healing of the water and the land, and then a healing of all the people. What we need from this court is enough of a recognition of these historic harms for that historic truth to be admitted. If we get that truth, we may be able to get reconciliation. We may be able to get healing. Thank you.
What we need from the court is...
We need a recognition of this historic truth, these historic illegal takings. In other countries, it's called truth and reconciliation, where you admit historic harms and then try to find a way, working together, to heal those harms. That's exactly how this case is framed. In central New York, the people welcome the Onondaga Nation. We have a cooperative relationship with the government of the county. That's a defendant here. The county executive is talking about returning land on the sacred lake to the nation. It's not disruptive. These are assumptions that are made by people that don't know the facts on the ground. We have a right to prove the facts.
The lawyer for New York State couldn't even get the name of the lake right.
And what do I need? I'm Onondaga.
Sorry.
I'll spell that for you later. My English name is Frida Jocks. I'm from the Onondagas, and I'm a Turtle Clan person. It's unfortunate that it appears that the court does not look for justice for our people. It appears that, it's more about what the law is about, and law versus law, etc. When one of the things that I was sorry that was not said was that we never had the intention of moving any landowner off their land. We know that there's open lands that belong, that New York State claims and that others claim, the counties, etc. And it could be negotiated where we could have access and a recognition that this is our right to have place and land on our land. It's unfortunate that it appears that the law does not look for justice. And it's true what Joe said, Joe Heath, our lawyer, that it is most important to recognize wrongdoing and injustice as it happened and have our people here that it's recognized have your people hear that it's recognized, and then look for ways to find a just way to make things right.
Tanya Ganella Frischner, Onondaga. And the question was, how does this case relate to the recently adopted United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples? And I think I would go back to what our attorney said very clearly in the court, that Onondaga is asking for justice. We are asking for New York State and the United States to follow the letter of the law. We have that inherent right, and it is our right to self-determination and our right to the takings of our land resources and properties without our free, prior, and informed consent. A minimum standard that 144 countries around the world had adopted to protect the theft and misappropriation of our territories.
It's F-R-E-I-D-A.
Your last name?
J-A-C-Q-U-E-S.
How old is Frida?
What? She's from Indian country today, Gail.
Yes, Shenandoah.
What is your
Well, my hope is that they would have listened to us in mind and to hear that they would know that are seeking justice, and they had accused us of being disruptive, of which we are not, because we entered this land rights act. It's not a land claim. We're not asking for possession of property. We're asking for a declaratory judgment to recognize. And we've always expressed to everyone, ever since we began this act, that it's on behalf of everybody that lives in the area. We're not about to disrupt anybody. As a matter of fact, the last few years, since this has begun, we've worked very closely with many people in this area who had been affected by living in this area that had been so polluted by all these toxins. And people that are crying out desperately for help, because they're just the average citizen that feels completely helpless. Those people support us in our quest for justice, for recognition.
Joe, if the court rules against Onondaga, what's the next step? Will you take it to the Supreme Court?
Well, this was a 3-judge panel of a full 13-judge court. Under their rules, they cannot rule any differently than they did in the Oneida case. They don't have the authority to overturn another 3-judge panel.
Can they remand it back to the district court?
They can, and that's what we asked for today.
For a trial on the merits?
If they don't,
Yeah.
if they affirm the dismissal, we will then ask the full Second Circuit, it's called en banc, to review the prior rulings and to review our case and see if they can come up with a more equitable solution. That was requested in both Cayuga and Oneida and denied. So again, the odds here are difficult. I only take easy cases.
And we never give up.
And that's the other important thing here. No matter what the U.S. courts say, the issue of the need for justice for the theft of this land will not rest. The next step would be to ask the Supreme Court to hear the case under certiorari. They turned that down in both Oneida and Cayuga. At that point, we will have exhausted all of our rights in the U.S. courts. We will then work to bring it into an international arena where we can use some of the protections that are brought in by the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, and where we think there may be justice for Indigenous people. And Onondaga deserves justice. They will keep fighting for this land no matter what our courts say. And someday, there will be some healing and justice.
What are the options for international arena?
Well, the Western Shoshone had some success in the OAS International Commission on Human Rights. The problem is the United States tends to ignore those. But what we need is enough of a moral... I was very upset with the state's lawyer to say, oh, we'll talk to them. That's a lie. In 1997, Governor Pataki said, you have a very strong case, but we won't talk to you until you file your case. Now, she probably doesn't know that, but they won't talk to us because they'll deny any responsibility, and they won't work for justice. And that's what we're asking for. Enough of a ruling from a court to be able to sit down and find some healing and find some justice.
If you pull a shade down to hide something, it doesn't go away.
Right, it's still there.
And if you do that, it is still there. And really, true healing is to bring it out, look at it, and then go from there. And that's what they want to do. Hide it.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I'm Bob Liff. I've been reading you. I've been representing them for a while, and I've just been reading you for 100 years.
Oh, God, is that old?
Well, if you are, I am.
I'm Jeanne, by the way.
What's your name?
Okay.
Jeannie, how are you? Bob Liff. You have a card or something?
Thanks for coming.
Yeah, I want some thoughts about that.
No,
Maybe we should
work with
have
them. I
them
work with
stated
them.
we were at
I'm not
the
going to.
hearing, the oral
I
argument.
had a fun.
We were briefed by the leadership,
Yes.
and this is our position.
Oh, okay.
Mention that, Steve.
Yeah, yeah.